Hey friends, Dave Paulides, Canine Missing Project. This is Huck L. Berry. She is the executive producer of the show. Yes, she's very famous. But we're actually going to cut this a little short because I want you to sit back, grab a cup of coffee, a croissant, and put your feet up because we're going to cover something that is important. Yes, very important. And what might that be? Well, many of you have contacted me and spoke about the scientists that have disappeared. And just so you guys know, I did a video about General McCaslin that disappeared in New Mexico. And I also did a video about Riza who disappeared in California on a hike. I haven't made many comments about the totality of this because the press keeps lopping on additional cases that they have no idea what they're doing. They're just throwing cases together, trying to make it sound like there's a whole bunch of people missing. And then they want to discount the cases where there was a suicide. Friends, unfortunately, very unfortunately, we have mass suicides occurring in the United States. One of the highest rates of suicide ever. David Wilcock, someone I have done conferences with in the past. He's written a couple best-selling books. He had a very popular video channel. He recently took his life in Colorado. Dave was always super nice to me. He was on Ancient Aliens a lot. I know he was going through a divorce. It was taking a toll on him. And I'm very, very, very sad to hear this. Now getting back to the scientists. There's a lot of these cases that said that there's an unknown cause of death. Friends, in many cases where somebody disappears, and the sheriff or the police department don't put down a cause of death, it's because the family asked for them not to do it. Why? Because it was a suicide. And for good, bad, or indifferent, that's just the facts of it. And everyone tends to think, oh, there's something nefarious happening because they're not listing the cause of death. No, there's not. There's not. There's another case where they lopped on where a physicist was killed in the desert area east of Los Angeles by a man who was stalking him. A crazy man. Nothing suspicious about that. There's a lot of people that kill others for stupid reasons. So I'm not going to get into all of the cases, but I've looked at many of them, and I believe that there are some that are strange. And I've talked about a few, and there's a few others I haven't talked about yet, but the majority of them, no, nothing strange going on. Sorry. The press, the more you hear about it in the press, the more you tend to believe it. It's almost like they brainwash the public. Now, I want to give you something that you can wrap your head around that is strange, that is 100% factual, that is no distortion of facts. I've talked about these cases in the past, and I'm going to put them all together in this package for you so you can say, press, you ought to be talking about this, not that. I first brought this out about 10 years ago. I put it all together in a package. It's in a couple of my books. The people that read it, and you guys know, oh yeah, that's strange. Nobody else really picked it up, except the other sites that mimic me all the time. Here we go. First case involves a young man named Stefan Bissert, 23 years old, missing January 20th, 1992, Olympic National Park. If you've watched that movie right there, Missing 411, National Parks, Washington State, Stefan's case is in that movie. You can watch it on Amazon right now. Stefan was a German physicist major who got a Fulbright scholarship to come to Oregon State to study graduate level physics. Brilliant young man. Brilliant. His hometown, and this is the name of it, Bad Oeynhausen, B-A-D space O-E-Y-N-H-A-U-S-E-N, Germany. Northeast of Dusseldorf. And he was studying at Oregon State University in Corvallis on an exchange program. These are very hard scholarships to get. Now, during that period in January, they had a break in school, and him and another exchange German named Gerd Forsman were planning a hike. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to go up to Washington and hike that coastal range around Olympic National Park. Oh yeah, there's a lot of people missing there. So the guys drove up to Olympic, and they purchased a U.S. Forest Service map of the area. That was their first problem. Meaning that the map wasn't very detailed. They probably should have gotten a USGS map or a Park Service map. They arrived in the park on January 18th, and they visited Hoodsport, Staircase, and Ozette. And they camped at the Soldeck campground near the hot springs. I refer you back to this again because there's another case right out of that exact area. Well, while they were there initially, they visited a ranger at a visitor center, and they explained a 23-mile hike that they wanted to make, they were proposing, and it would be right across kind of the middle of the park and go across some high elevation areas. The ranger looked at their idea and said, "No, I would not do that now. Weather's too unpredictable. There's a lot of snow up high. I don't think you could make it." Now, maybe in the summer, that 23-mile hike could be done by somebody who's in really good shape in the summer, not now. Apparently, the guys didn't listen. In January 20th at about 10:30 in the morning, the guys had already started down the trail, and Gerd had stopped at a lake. He was ahead of Stefan. He had stopped at a lake, stripped his clothes down, and took a dip. He was getting out, drying off, and Stefan came up to him and said, "Okay, I'll see you at the end." And he took off ahead of him. Well, Gerd wasn't going to try to catch him, and turned around, went back to the car, drove the car back to the location where they were both going to meet, and waited. Now, the trail that Stefan was on, listen carefully. It first climbs 1,600 feet and 3.6 miles to Deer Lake, about a 3,500 foot elevation. And then it climbs 1,700 feet and 4.2 miles to Bogachiel Park. Then drops down 1.2 miles to Hoe Lake, H-O-H. Beautiful place. The trail then drops 3,500 feet and 5.2 miles to the Hoe River Valley. And then it's a 9.2 mile hike to the Hoe Visitor Center where the car would be at. Now, this Hoe River Valley would almost remind you like a jungle. It's very overgrown, thick, lush, beautiful. The areas that it went through to get to that location had lots of snow. And it wasn't that Stefan wasn't in fantastic shape. He was. But number one, he wasn't dressed for the event. And number two, his map was the best. And there was a possibility he could have gotten lost based on losing a trail in the snow, etc. Now, the Park Service said he was wearing blue jeans, a light coat, carrying a backpack with a gallon jug of water, a tripod, and a camera. No mention of any snacks or food, which seemed odd considering he was going to be gone all day and he was 23 years old. Even an older person like me would want to have some nutrients in that backpack to keep me going for that 23 miles. Well, parts of that area I told you were 3 to 4 feet of snow. Gerd goes to the spot where they were supposed to meet. Stefan doesn't show up. Now you're playing this game about how long do you wait for your partner to show up before you call the Park Service. Well, Gerd waited till 1 p.m. the following day. Contacts park officials, explains to them what happened, and a search is set in motion. It was a 7-day search and rescue. Canines were flown into the area by helicopter because to get into the spot they thought he would be in would be too tiring to even get the searchers there. Stefan's parents heard about the disappearance and flew out right away from Germany. They spoke only broken English. Reports stated that they were overwhelmed by the over 75 searchers that were meeting every morning, going out and trying to find their son. There were searchers from a multitude of agencies, canines, helicopters. The only thing they saw is at the part where Gerd had taken the dip in the lake and Stefan had met up with him. That was the only location in that region that they saw tracks. Now, during that 7-day search, it had rained, snowed, hailed, wind had forced the helicopters down. It was horrific weather conditions to search at times. After 7 days, they called the search. Parents went home without their son. Gerd went back to school without his friend. Then on May 15th, 1992, the Park Service decided they were going to go in again and make another effort to find Stefan. Well, again, they brought in helicopters, searchers, canines, and they went into the area that they thought he had been, near the Bogachil River, and they found nothing. Not a thing. So let's think about this. Under those conditions, your body would deteriorate rapidly. Snow, wind, rain, rapidly. What would never disappear is the camera and the tripod. And that nylon backpack he was wearing probably would last several years as well. This happened in '92. There has never been a report that anyone's found anything related to Stefan. Just the facts. That is Stefan right there. He wore glasses. He was about 5'10", described as brilliant, in very good athletic condition, physicist. Now, what do you say about that? Not knowing the area, not knowing the parameters, not checking the weather, not listening to administrators who tell you not to do something is key. Now, just because you're brilliant doesn't mean you have a lot of common sense or you have a lot of trail skills. Sometimes when you go into a new area, you have to admit what you don't know. And then you have to rely on local experts to help you manage your trip. It's January in Washington. It snows, it rains, it hails. Wearing just a light coat, crazy. Not having a tent, I think, is one of those things you've got to have covered just in case. If you get trapped out there and snowing, raining, you've got to have cover. You got to. Now, what I'm presenting you is 4 physicists, all German, that have disappeared in the world. Oh yeah. 4 physicists disappeared in the world. All German. German number 2. Man's name is, so first of all, Stefan's case can be read in Missing 411, The Devil's in the Detail. Go to missing411.com. Carl Dish, 26 years old, missing May 8th, 1965. Dish, the last name is German. He was born and raised in Monroe, Wisconsin. I did a background search of his name, and Carl made headlines when he was a young person because he was great at track and field, and specifically the hurdles. He won a specific award for the Boy Scouts. This was in the paper. He went on to the University of Wisconsin, and he became president of his fraternity, who's described as brilliant. Now, stop there. There's a lot of brilliant people that don't have good communication skills, but to become head of a fraternity, you got to have a lot of social skills. That says something. In 1964, Carl had graduated and he was hired by Boulder Labs in Colorado. And he was hired to work at the Bird Ice Station in Antarctica. He was hired as a physicist. He arrived on February 9th, 1965. On March 2nd, he called his family and said, hey, everything was good. The weather has been terrible. The weather has been super cold. Kind of what you'd expect on a trip like that. He was on a 1-year assignment. Here's the official statement from the Bird Ice Station. Carl R. Dish, ionospheric physicist for the National Bureau of Standards in Boulder Labs, disappeared May 8, 1965 from the Ionosphere Forward Scatter Station near the Bird Station. The team was spending a year as part of the NBS contributing to the Year of the Quiet Sun. Dish was returning to the main station after a visit to the Radio Norris installation when he apparently missed a hand line. Temps at the time were minus 45 degrees Fahrenheit with strong winds. He was an ionospheric physicist. He was listening to things out there. Wonder what he heard. So the way this worked is that there were buildings at the Bird Ice Station. It was super common to have horrific weather conditions where you couldn't even see a couple feet. So what they devised was they would have ropes going from building to building. What you did is you put on your full weather survival gear, you hung on to the rope, and you made your way from station to station, building to building. It said that he was returning to the main station after a visit to the Radio Norris installation. There was a comprehensive and lengthy search for Carl at the site. That site had 19 military officers and 8 scientists, 1 husky dog. Yeah, the husky was the breed. The dog's name was Gus. That all wintered there. Every article I read said something really interesting. The dog, Gus, seemed to be attached to Carl. Carl loved the dog loved Carl. Well, my first question is, I wonder what the 19 military people are doing over the winter out there that the scientists couldn't have done. I could never figure that out. I didn't know. I couldn't tell you. Well, at 9:15 a.m. that day, Carl left the facility. And what you do is when you leave one building to go to another, you call the building you're going to and you tell them, hey, I'll be coming in, I'm leaving now. So that they have the heads up that somebody's coming. Well, he was dressed in full survival gear. The trip was 7,000 feet, over a mile, almost maybe a mile and a half. At 10 a.m. he hadn't returned. So 2 men were dispatched from the building he was going to. One from the building he was going to and one from the building he came from. So they walked towards the middle. Each searcher met in the middle. They hadn't found anything. Went back and they got more reinforcements. The reinforcements came out when the weather cleared a little bit and they found some tracks leading away from the hand line. At the time Carl disappeared, there was a storm, there was a blizzard, there were limited visibility conditions. So searchers went out from noon till 6 p.m. They came back in, and then another group of searchers went out at 7 p.m. that night to look. Now they had special tractors, snow machines, and all kinds of things to look. And the search kept going for days. There's a website called southpolestation.com. Way down on part of the site, it said May 9th, 1965, special snow machines dispatched. They searched a 9-mile length, 1-mile wide stretch for tracks. A few were found. On May 12th, the search and rescue continued every day in a cold, blinding snowstorm. Then it was termed. I was talking to several friends about this case. And I never knew about this, but they told me to read John Keel's book called Haunted Planet. And I did. Keel says that a 35 square mile area was searched. And that during the search, the dog at Bird Station that was super attached to Carl, Gus, he disappeared. It was said that Gus had helped in the search but couldn't find Dish, and then he vanished. Also said that some of the searchers who were out there looking for Dish had saw mysterious lights in the sky and heard engine noises in the distance that they had never heard before. That's weird. Another article stated that Carl had made this same trip between those buildings at least 25 times. May 2nd, 2006, there was an article in the journal Nature. And in the article was described as Antarctica shrinking. And it spoke about the ice disappearing in this area around the Bird Ice Station. Why I read that is because it's been 60 years since Carl's body, or since Carl disappeared. His body was never found. No remnants were ever found. There are many, many rumors about this case online. Weird ones. One talked about another station by another country getting some type of communication over their radio related to this. Some believe it was Carl. So what happened to Carl and what happened to Gus? How could they not find him? I don't believe he committed suicide. There's no evidence of that. And several miles away, they found his tracks. a real question. Or did something really nefarious happen that we don't understand? The story is in Missing 411 Off the Grid. That's the picture of Carl. 26 years old. A brilliant ionospheric physicist. Next case. Reinhard Kirchner, 61 years old, missing from Coconino County, Arizona, April 1st, 2007. He was a physicist, research physicist employed by GSI Corporation in Darmstadt, Germany. He was single and engaged to a German lady. I looked up GSI because I wanted to know what they did, and the website said, quote, GSI operates a large-scale, worldwide, unique accelerator facility for heavy ions. Said that researchers from all over the world come to the facility to do their experiments. Which tells me Reinhardt was in touch with people from all over the world. He was described as brilliant. There's a commonality amongst all these. Now, people in Germany, people in Europe tend to take long vacations. A month is normal sometimes. 2 weeks is below average. People in the US don't take vacations like they do in other parts of the world. So don't think this is odd. On March 1st, 2007, Reinhardt left Germany, and on March 2nd, he picked up a camper truck in Vancouver, British Columbia. Something he had done before. He'd pick up the camper truck, and then drive across the western U.S. Well, when the truck was eventually found, they found some receipts in it that showed he had spent 2 nights at the Escalante National Monument. But where he had been before that, nobody was sure. On March 20th, he called his fiancée in Germany, said everything was going great, he was having fun, he was on track to meet her in Las Vegas when she landed on April 9th. Here's where it gets weird. April 12th, the Coconino County Sheriff gets a call from the Navajo police about an abandoned camper truck and possible missing person. It had it had British Columbia license plates on it. They called, it was rented to Reinhardt. It was parked at the Colorado River Gorge. I've been to this exact point, friends. It's a very, very strange place. It's on the Navajo reservation. This truck was parked very close to the gorge. The gorge would remind you of a small Grand Canyon. A river at the bottom, huge sides. Right near where this was, there was a sign there put up by the reservation, talked about cleaning your site, blah, blah, blah. And there was a gradual path that you could go down to the bottom of the canyon. Epically beautiful if you like those kind of things. Reinhardt was there in the spring, which was smart because in the summer it would be a killer heat. So he knew what he was doing. So the Navajo police get there. They call the Coconino County Sheriffs. They come out. So if it's a Native American missing on the reservation or it's a Native American issue, Navajo police take it. If it's somebody else from somewhere else, then the Coconino County Sheriffs take it. So they do a hasty search of the area when they get there, and what they find is a very nice camper truck. It's got all the doors and the camper doors locked. Tracks around the outside. Looked like somebody parked it there and went on a hike. Eventually, eventually Coconino County hears about a missing German, Reinhard Kirchner. Well, that matches the truck. The problem with this is that his girlfriend's coming in from Germany. He's missing. She isn't sure where he rented the truck. If he had owned the truck, that would be easy. Then they would put a notification on the license plate that if this truck is found, it's associated with a missing person. But they never put that together because the truck was rented in another country, Canada. Well, eventually they put it together. He's reported missing by his fiancée. The location is 20 miles west of milepost 480 on US 89. That's the closest I could get for you. When she heard about this, the fiancé told the deputies that he had been to this place before. He liked hiking in that area. Oh, and it was quite different than anything he had seen in Germany. She stated that he was ultra fit and he could hike 10 to 15 miles a day easy. So don't let that 61 years old fool you. The deputies call out a full crime scene crew to work the truck, call in search and rescue, helicopters, canines, and they start searching the truck with the crime scene crew as the searchers are going down looking and bringing the canines around. Right away in the search, winds get up to 50, 60 miles an hour in this area, oddly, and they have to ground the helicopter crew. They can't fly. When they look in the truck, they find that the refrigerator is stocked with food, just like Reinhard would do. And they determined that his day pack, his camera, are gone. Those are the two things for sure they knew were gone. So I filed a Freedom of Information Act request against Coconino County, and I ended up getting the whole report and all of the photographs that were taken. Now, this isn't stated oddly in the report, but I stated it in my book, and I wrote about this case in Missing 411 Off the Grid. That one of the pictures showed his hiking boots on the floorboard of the truck. Friends, I think that's odd. I'm sorry. I think it's odd. So did he mean to take a full day hike, or was he just going to take a walk and take some pictures? I don't know. Well, on April 18th, Coconino County ends up terminating the search. But there was a lieutenant named Mark Christian from the sheriff's office who was part of the team that was working the truck. As they are there, and there's 5 or 6 sheriff's cars around, 2 people pull up. And these people were sheep herders from the area. They're always in this area and they're working it. And they told the sheriff that they believe that the truck got there on April 1st. And they never saw Reinhard around the truck. But they went over to the truck at one point when their herd got close and they saw a lot of tracks around it. Didn't say if it was the same person or not, but they said that they also saw something shiny in the sky. And many people had seen it at about the time the truck arrived. And that the people in that community believed that Reinhard was taken by aliens. Friends, I have read thousands of pages of police reports. I've never seen that anywhere. Even if you were told it, most deputies or police would not put that in the report. This lieutenant did. These people believed it. When I was at the site, it reminded me of an X-Files location. Felt creepy, Felt odd. Kept looking in the sky. And then again, I kind of wanted to walk and hike down to the bottom of the canyon. Oh, it's a long hike. I did not do that. And I was with a videographer at the time. We both stood right there and did not move. So what do I think happened to Reinhardt? I have no idea. But canines didn't find him. When the helicopters eventually flew, they didn't find him. This was in 2007. So it's been 19 years. Never's been found. Again, a brilliant German physicist employed by a German company. How could you discount that? Perfect 411 case. And here's another one. I'll show you both the pictures when we're done here. Next case involves a professor of physics from Germany, Alois Krost, 62 years old, missing October 1st, 2013 at 5:45 in the afternoon. When is the optimum time to disappear according to 411 statistics? 4 p.m. That's right. Krost was a professor of physics at Otto von Guericke University in Magdeburg, Germany. He had traveled with a group of other Germans to attend a science conference sponsored by UCLA at the Lake Arrowhead Conference Center above the LA Valley. If you've ever been to Lake Arrowhead, or if you haven't been, you should go. Beautiful place. Lots of big boulders. Pretty lake. Pretty setting at the conference center. On September 30th, Krost joined a conference center sponsored hike led by 2 guides. 20 people from the conference center went. They put 1 guide in front of the group, 1 guide in back of the group. Smart way to do it. And they were going to hike the Pinnacle Trail. This trail follows a small creek, giant boulders everywhere. And during the hike, Krost got tired. And he starts to slow down. Simultaneously, the last guide at the back gets sick. And both of them sit down to rest. Years ago, a reporter wrote a story about my work called "Don't Be Last in Line." Because the last people in lines tend to be the ones that disappear. Remember that. There's also many of the times I've written about people get separated because one of them feels ill, goes back to the car, goes back to the camp. Other one continues on. Remember that. Well, eventually Krost gets feeling a little better and he says, I'm going to take off down the trail. The guide says, I'm going to wait a little bit, but I'll follow you back in a second. Krost takes off down the trail. Well, the guide eventually gets back to the conference center and they do a count and they go, hey, we're missing Mr. Krost. Well, he left and he was just in front of me. Can't find him. They send 4 guides back into the woods along the Pinnacle Trail and they hike it twice, calling his name. Don't get an answer. They call the sheriff's office and they dispatch a deputy. And he soon realizes the seriousness of it and he calls for more reinforcements. One of the first they send is their helicopter. And then they call for a search and rescue team. Eventually, they get SAR teams from all around the state responding. Multiple dog teams, over 100 searchers. And they decide that they're going to take on a 3.5-mile radius of the trail and search that completely. Well, Krost family in Germany hear about it. His daughter comes out. He had friends at the conference. They were concerned. They were monitoring what was going on. Temperatures weren't extreme, but they were warm. Searchers couldn't believe that they weren't finding him. There isn't a lot of tree cover in this area that they were hiking, so he should have stuck out. They extend the search out to 2 weeks because he's an international figure. He's a pretty famous professor. They can't find anything. They don't find anything. Well, it's been 13 years since that disappearance, and they haven't found anything of him. In the months afterwards, they did put out cadaver dogs into that area, which should have picked up a body scent up to 2 to 3 miles away. Nothing. They put his daughter in the sheriff's office helicopter, and they showed her the huge area that they searched for him. They wanted her to know how hard they worked to find him. So, it's been 13 years since Mr. Crost disappeared. He's never been found. Alois Crost, Reinhard Kirchner, Stefan Berset, Karl Disch. From Germany, from Germany, from Germany, from Wisconsin, German heritage, all physicists. Now, friends, I want you to think about this. Think about the missing scientists that the news is making a big deal about right now and how vague that is. Well, we really don't know. Well, I am giving you the facts on 4 scientists that vanished that were all German. 3 were from Germany. All had the same occupation. Come on. Why isn't anyone paying attention to this? What would be the odds that the only physicists missing in the world were German? Tell me that. Maybe someone should run that in AI and see what they could figure out. Alois' story is in Missing 411, The Devil's in the Detail. When I first discovered this, I then spent 3 weeks searching archives for physicists that have vanished, disappeared. Oh, and there were others, but they were always criminal. Kidnappings, murders. Nothing clean like this. I mean, Kirchner and Crost disappeared hiking. Arizona and California. Adjoining states. Doing the same thing. Crost, you got point of separation. When you got separated from that guide, something happened. Kirchner was alone. Disch, after he left the building, point of separation, he disappeared. Berset's point of separation, after he left his friend, he disappeared. You see, the commonality here is they were alone. That's why you always stay with a partner when you're out in the woods. Always. You always carry a personal locator beacon. Always. You always carry a GPS trail guide. Always. You always tell people where you're going and when you're coming back. In Kirchner's case, that was a big faux pas because his girlfriend didn't know where he was. Crost, I think everybody in the world knew where he was last seen. But what happened? That's the $1 million question. You can look at that trail online and you can see what it looks like. And it's called the Pinnacle Trail. And there are some pictures of the trail going through this creek area that has a lot of big boulders. So friends, Do not buy my books on Amazon. You are going to get ripped off. Those are resellers charging between $100 and $300. That is not me. In fact, somebody asked me the other day on a YouTube, Dave, why are you charging so much money for your books? No, my books are $25 on our website, missing411.com. DVDs to the movies, etc., missing411.com. You can watch my first 3 movies, Missing 411, Missing 411 The Hunted, Missing 411 The UFO Connection. Watch them on Tubi for free right now. Tubi, Tubi. You guys are great. I appreciate you. This video should go viral. If it doesn't, I have no idea why. If the press really wants to find some scientists with some linkage, follow this video. Please post it on your social media. Be kind. Please be kind to people. Paulides out.